May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Holy One, Emmanuel. Amen. Please be seated. There are moments in our lives and in history, moments both small and monumental, that change everything. Perhaps you have experienced such a moment in your own life. I remember the first time I saw a nativity scene. I was 6 years old. I was playing with my friends Jeffrey and Matthew, which I did almost every day. Both of our families had put up our Christmas trees at the same time at the beginning of December. As the weeks went by, more and more presents were accumulating under my family's tree, but there was nothing under their tree. I was worried that my friends weren't going to get any presents at Christmas. Then about a week before Christmas, I walked into their house and I could see that there was something under the tree. I ran over, knelt, and stared. I had no idea what it was. There was a miniature wooden barn with grass on top, miniature people who were dressed weirdly, and a baby lying in what looked like straw. What kind of present is this, I wondered. I have no idea how long I was staring at the barn. At some point, Mrs. Corbett came and sat beside me and started telling me about the figurines, about Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus and the shepherds and the Magi. And as she was telling me about them, she told me the story of Jesus' birth. And afterwards, she put the baby Jesus in my hand. And I was confused. And I asked, why is this under the Christmas tree? Baby Jesus is the gift that's given at Christmas, she said. I did not grow up in a church-going family. I didn't really know much about God at all. But I remember that moment with Mrs. Corbett and hearing the story for the first time. That moment changed everything for me. And it was a moment 2,000 years ago that changed everything. A moment when something new emerged. It was the moment when God broke into the world as a human being. In the birth of Jesus, God gave us the gift of grace, which is God's unending love. And it disrupts old patterns and brings to life new ones. We live in a moment when God is not part of our public discourse or our shared public life, and God is dismissed. And when there is a conversation about God, it tends to oscillate between God doesn't exist and, well, if God does exist, God is relevant. Look at the mess the world is in. What difference is God making? And you may find yourself between one of those two spots on the continuum. And yes, we can look around the world and see the darkness and chaos and wonder if Jesus' birth actually changed anything. The same patterns of destruction and war and greed and poverty and violence are repeated over and over again. And yet, if God didn't matter, we would not be here tonight. There is something more that we are seeking. And while some of us here tonight may not name the longing in their hearts as God, the longing is still there. Tonight we are like the shepherds gathering to see the infant who was born, to be part of the holy night in which everything changed. A night that shattered the illusion that God doesn't care, that God is distant, that it is on our shoulders to fix the world's problems, and that some people are more important than other people, that we are not worthy of love and peace and justice. But Christmas is a celebration of the moment 2,000 years ago in which that gift of grace was given. And it marked the birth of a new way of life. A life in which God is with us here. A life that resists the dynamics of power and greed and violence. A life in which everyone is loved. Everyone deserves peace. Everyone deserves justice. And Christmas is also a moment when we are invited to say yes, we believe, and we embrace the gift that was given, and we seek to live in harmony with it. That gift of grace given so many years ago matters. God matters. I like how one priest describes grace as God's official job description. He says, grace is the goodness glue that holds all things together. It is what God does to keep whole all things that God has made in love. In case you didn't hear it the first time, grace is God's unending love towards us. And once we have been touched by grace, we are forever changed. When we are touched by grace, we are drawn into the mystery of God becoming human in Jesus. The mystery of God choosing to share life with all of creation, to transform the world with us, not for us. We begin to experience God's love not as a transaction, not as a test about what we know or don't know about God. And it's not about questioning whether we are worthy to be loved. Rather, it is an encounter with the divine, experiencing ourselves and everyone else as God's beloved. We begin to see God moving in our lives and in the world in ways that were previously invisible to us. And we begin to see that God's strength is tenderness. And we share that tenderness with everyone else. Grace moves us beyond ourselves to the world around us, and our heart is drawn to the life we share in common. It is a grace-filled life when we seek to be more loving, more trusting, and more tender. It is also joining in the work that Jesus came to do, and he came with a mission: peace and justice, wholeness and restoration. And his mission is our mission too. Our mission is to respond to hatred with love, to doubt with faith, to falsehood with truth. Where there is pain, we bring comfort. Where there is despair, we bring hope. Where there is darkness, we bring light. We are called to be God's instrument of grace in the world, and our journey as bearers of grace begins on this holy night. Friends, perhaps we can look upon the manger tonight as if it was the first time we've seen it. Can you imagine holding the baby Jesus in your own hand? Can you feel God's grace flowing towards you? You are God's beloved. And may you experience Jesus' grace this holy night, and may you hold it in your heart. Amen.